Have you ever tried to learn English all by yourself? It sounds impossible at first, right? No teacher, no classroom, just you and your determination. But today I want to show you that it's not only possible, it's powerful. When I first started, I had nothing fancy. No courses, no tutor, not even fast internet, just a small dictionary and a big dream. And honestly, that dream was enough to get me started. Learning alone taught me something school never did: how to stay curious and consistent. It wasn't always easy. There were days I wanted to quit, days I thought I wasn't improving at all. But each small step mattered. Every word, every movie, every moment of practice added up. So, if you've ever doubted yourself, stay with me. Because by the end of this episode, you'll see you can learn English on your own too. When I started learning English, I didn't plan to do it alone. It just happened that way. I lived in a small town where there were no English classes at all. Even if there were, I couldn't afford them. So one day, I made a decision. I would teach myself. It felt scary, but also exciting. I had no teacher, no schedule, no one telling me what to do. But I had something stronger, a reason. I wanted to speak English because it opened doors. I wanted to travel, to make friends from other countries, to understand songs and movies. That dream kept me going even when things got tough. At first, I thought learning without a teacher was a disadvantage. But soon I realized it had hidden strengths. I could learn at my own pace. If I wanted to repeat one phrase 10 times, I could. If I wanted to skip something boring, I could. There was no pressure, no judgment. I was free to learn the way I liked, and that freedom became my biggest advantage. One thing I noticed early on was how different it felt to be responsible for my own learning. No one was checking my homework. No one was correcting my pronunciation. Everything depended on me. At first, that was hard to accept, but over time it made me stronger. I learned to trust myself. I started to see mistakes not as failures, but as feedback. Every time I got something wrong, it meant I was trying. And that, to me, was progress. I remember one moment clearly. It was late at night. I was listening to an English radio show, and I didn't understand almost anything. But I kept listening. For some reason, those unfamiliar sounds made me curious, not frustrated. I imagined my brain slowly tuning itself to a new rhythm. That night, I realized something powerful. Learning a language isn't about knowing every rule. It's about getting comfortable with the unknown. Learning alone also gave me independence. I didn't need to wait for permission to study. If I wanted to learn at 6 a.m., I could. If I wanted to stop and dance to an English song, I could. I designed my own way of learning, one that felt natural. Sometimes I learned from mistakes, sometimes from music, sometimes from laughter. Each method was mine, shaped by curiosity and trial. Looking back, I see that not having a teacher forced me to become my own guide. I had to plan, motivate, and correct myself. And yes, it was hard. But that process built a kind of discipline no class could teach. It taught me how to keep going even when no one was watching. It taught me that success doesn't come from resources. It comes from resilience. So, if you're listening right now and thinking, I can't do it without a teacher, let me tell you this: you can. You might not have all the tools, but you have the will, and that's the most powerful thing you'll ever need. Because when you take ownership of your learning, every small effort becomes a victory. And over time, those small victories turn into real fluency. That's the beauty of learning alone. It's not just about English. It's about discovering how capable you truly are. When I finally began my learning journey, I had almost nothing. No fancy courses, no smartphone apps, not even stable internet. Just a small dictionary and a few old books I found in a box at home. It felt like trying to build a bridge with my bare hands. But I told myself, start anyway. And that's exactly what I did. In the beginning, I made the classic mistake every learner makes. I opened the dictionary, pointed at random words, and tried to memorize them. I repeated them again and again like a robot. But after a few days, I realized something. I could remember the words for one night, but by morning they were gone. That method didn't work. I wasn't learning. I was just forcing my brain to store meaningless sounds. So, I stopped. Then I changed my approach. Instead of trying to memorize, I decided to listen. At that time, I had an old radio that played international programs. I found a channel that spoke only in English. I didn't understand almost anything, but I kept listening. At first, it was frustrating. Every sentence sounded like one long word. But I told myself, be patient. Your ears need time to adjust. And slowly they did. I began to catch small pieces. Hello, thank you, morning, today. Tiny fragments of meaning that made me smile. Each word was like a light turning on in a dark room. It gave me hope. Listening became my new habit. Every night before bed, I turned on the radio and let the voices fill my room. Sometimes I repeated what I heard. Sometimes I just listened quietly, imagining the meaning behind each sound. That daily listening changed everything. My brain started to recognize patterns. I could sense where sentences began and ended. Even though I didn't understand all the words, I started to feel the rhythm of English. It was like music, different, but familiar in its own way. And the more I listened, the more confident I became. Later, when I finally got access to a DVD player, I started watching movies. The first one I watched was Home Alone. It was perfect. Simple story, funny scenes, and easy conversations. I watched it with subtitles in my language first. Then I switched to English subtitles. The magic happened when I watched it again and again. Each time I understood a little more. I didn't feel like studying anymore. I was enjoying the movie while my brain learned naturally. Whenever I heard a new phrase, I paused and wrote it down in a notebook. Then I tried to use it later in my own sentences. For example, if the movie said keep the change, I would repeat it out loud and imagine using it at a cafe. This small practice made learning alive. It wasn't just theory anymore. I also started singing along to songs in English. Even when I didn't understand all the lyrics, I focused on pronunciation. Singing made me feel brave. It turned learning from something serious into something joyful. Music became my teacher, and rhythm became my guide. Looking back now, I realize those first steps were the most important. They built my foundation. Not perfect, but strong. I learned that learning isn't about perfection. It's about connection. Listening helped me connect with the language before I even understood it. It taught me to be patient, curious, and playful. So if you're at the beginning of your journey, don't worry about knowing it all. Start small. Listen often. Feel the rhythm. Even if you only understand one word today, that's progress. Because one day, those small pieces will come together, and you'll realize you've been learning all along. After a few months of listening, I wanted to understand more. I realized that hearing the language wasn't enough. I needed to see the words, read them, and connect the sounds with the text. That's when I turned to movies. Movies became my classroom, my teacher, and sometimes even my friend. The first movie I chose was Home Alone. It was light, funny, and full of simple conversations. I had already watched it many times in my own language, so I knew what was happening in every scene. That made it easier to focus on the English words instead of the story. The first time I watched it, I used subtitles in my language. The second time, I switched to English subtitles. And by the third time, I tried watching without any subtitles at all. Each round taught me something new. I started to recognize expressions like, watch out, or that's amazing. They stuck in my memory because I could see the emotion behind them. Movies made English real. It wasn't just about grammar or vocabulary anymore. It was about tone, rhythm, and feelings. I noticed how characters said really with different emotions: surprise, doubt, or excitement. No textbook could have taught me that. I learned how people use English, not just how they write it. I also began to write things down. Every time I heard a phrase I liked, I paused the movie and wrote it in my notebook. Then I created small sentences using those phrases. For example, when I learned what's going on, I practiced by saying it out loud in different situations. What's going on outside? What's going on here? Repeating them made the phrases stick naturally. That notebook became my treasure. It was full of quotes, idioms, and bits of dialogue from different movies. Sometimes I would read it before bed, imagining the scenes where I first heard those words. It felt like collecting tiny pieces of the language, one scene at a time. Over time, I stopped treating movies like lessons. They became part of my routine. Whenever I felt tired or bored, I'd watch something short in English. Even if I didn't understand every line, I was still learning. My brain was connecting sounds, meanings, and emotions without me realizing it. Then something unexpected happened. I started thinking in English. It wasn't all the time, but in small moments, like when I watched a funny scene, the first thought in my head was, "That's hilarious," instead of my native language. That was when I knew something was changing. The language was becoming part of me. Later, I added another step, writing short notes in English. Every night I wrote a few sentences about what I watched or learned. They didn't have to be perfect. Sometimes they were messy, but they were mine. For example, today I learned the phrase hang in there. It means don't give up. Writing helped me remember better, and it made me feel proud of my progress. One of the best parts of learning through movies is that it doesn't feel like studying. You laugh, you feel, you connect. And before you know it, your vocabulary grows naturally. You begin to understand jokes, accents, and even cultural hints hidden in dialogues. English becomes alive, not just a subject, but a living experience. If you're learning alone, try this approach. Pick a movie you already know. Watch it with subtitles, then switch to English, and finally without. Pause, repeat, write down new phrases. It's simple but incredibly powerful. Because when you enjoy what you learn, you never lose motivation. And in the end, that joy is what keeps you learning day after day. After months of watching, listening, and writing, I realized something important. To truly learn English, I needed balance. Listening alone wasn't enough. Reading helped, but without speaking and writing, it felt incomplete. So I made a new plan. I would train all four skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Each skill supported the others, like four legs of a table. Let's start with listening. It became the foundation of everything I did. Every morning I listened to something in English, radio podcasts, short videos, even songs. At first I didn't understand much, but that didn't stop me. I focused on rhythm, tone, and pronunciation instead of every word. Sometimes I listened to the same recording again and again just to catch one new phrase. It was like training my ears to recognize a new melody. And slowly, my understanding grew. Then came speaking, which was by far the hardest part. Without a teacher or partner, I had no one to talk to. But I refused to let that stop me. I discovered two methods that changed everything: shadowing and self-talk. Shadowing means listening to a line and repeating it immediately, mimicking the sound, emotion, and speed of the speaker. It felt awkward at first. I laughed at myself many times. But it worked. My mouth started moving naturally, my pronunciation got smoother, and my confidence grew. Self-talk was my secret weapon. I started talking to myself in English every day. When I cooked, I said what I was doing. I'm boiling water. I'm adding sugar. When I walked outside, I described what I saw. The sky looks cloudy. That dog is running fast. It may sound silly, but it works wonders. You don't just practice speaking, you start thinking in English. And once your thoughts switch to English, everything changes. Next came reading. At first, I tried newspapers, but they were too hard. So I switched to children's books and short stories. They use simple grammar and clear sentences. Each story gave me small victories. I could finish one and feel proud. Later, I began reading articles online about topics I loved: travel, psychology, and technology. Reading what I enjoyed made learning fun. I wasn't forcing myself anymore. English became a door to explore my interests. Writing was the last piece of the puzzle. I started keeping a small English journal. Every night I wrote 3 or 4 sentences about my day. They didn't need to be perfect. They just needed to be honest. Today I learned a new word. I watched a video in English. I made a mistake but learned from it. Writing helped me remember vocabulary naturally. It also made me slow down and think in English. Sometimes I even wrote short dialogues between imaginary people. Then I read them out loud to practice both writing and speaking together. Combining all 4 skills transformed my learning. I wasn't just absorbing English, I was living it. Listening taught me how the language sounds. Speaking trained my mouth and confidence. Reading expanded my vocabulary and ideas. Writing organized my thoughts and made my progress visible. Each skill fed the others, and together, they built real fluency. The most valuable lesson I learned was this: you don't need to master everything at once. Just practice a little of each skill every day. Even 15 minutes per skill adds up over time. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. The more you touch English, the more it becomes a part of your daily rhythm. And soon, you'll realize it's not just a language you study, it's one you live. So, if you're studying on your own, remember this: balance your skills. Listen actively, speak bravely, read curiously, write honestly. Together, they will take you further than any classroom ever could. The more I practiced, the more I understood one simple truth: success didn't come from talent or luck. It came from showing up every single day. Consistency was the secret ingredient. It didn't matter how much I studied in one day. What mattered was that I kept going. When I first started, I made the mistake of studying too much at once. I'd spend hours reading and listening, then take long breaks because I felt exhausted. But after a few weeks, I realized something. Those big study days didn't help me as much as short, regular ones. My brain learned better with small, daily habits. So I built a simple rule for myself: study English every day, no matter what. It could be 10 minutes or 30, even 5 on a busy day. What mattered was that I didn't skip. And slowly, that rule changed everything. It turned English from a goal into a lifestyle. Each day became a step forward. Sometimes it was just watching a short video. Sometimes it was writing a few lines in my journal. Other times, I practiced pronunciation in front of a mirror. They were small actions, but they built momentum. And that momentum became unstoppable. There were still tough days. Days when I felt tired, lazy, or frustrated. Days when I thought I wasn't improving at all. But consistency taught me to ignore those doubts. Because even if I didn't feel progress, I knew it was happening quietly. Learning is like growing a plant. You don't see it every day, but under the surface, something beautiful is forming. To stay consistent, I use small tricks. First, I made English part of my routine, not a chore. I connected it with things I already enjoyed. If I liked music, I listened to English songs. If I liked movies, I watched one in English every weekend. If I scrolled social media, I followed English pages. Learning stopped being a task. It became a habit I looked forward to. Second, I tracked my progress. I had a small notebook where I wrote what I did each day, 1 line per day. Listened to a podcast. Learned 3 new words. It sounds simple, but it gave me proof that I was moving forward. And seeing those pages fill up kept me motivated. Third, I learned to forgive myself. Some days I couldn't study. Maybe I was sick, busy, or just tired. Instead of feeling guilty, I accepted it and started fresh the next day. That mindset saved me from quitting. Consistency isn't about being perfect, it's about returning again and again. Over time, daily learning became second nature. I didn't have to force it anymore. I found myself thinking in English while cooking or walking. I would catch a word from a song and smile because I understood it. That's when I knew the effort was paying off. What surprised me most was how this consistency changed not only my English, but my mindset. It taught me patience. It showed me that progress isn't always visible, but it's always building. And it made me realize something powerful. Discipline is more reliable than motivation. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you moving. If you're learning alone, remember this. Don't aim for perfect study sessions. Aim for consistency. Study a little every day. Some days will feel amazing, others will feel slow. But if you keep going, you'll wake up one day realizing how far you've come. That's the magic of small, steady effort. It turns impossible goals into daily victories. And that's how English becomes not just something you learn, but something you live. Even though I was making progress, learning alone wasn't always easy. There were challenges that tested my patience and confidence. Some days I felt unstoppable. Other days, I wanted to give up completely. But those challenges turned out to be my greatest teachers. The first big challenge was motivation. At the start, I was full of energy. I made plans, schedules, and colorful notebooks. But after a few weeks, the excitement faded. There were days I didn't want to study at all. No teacher, no classmates, no one to push me. It felt lonely. So I asked myself, how can I stay motivated when no one is watching? The answer came slowly. I started setting small, reachable goals. Not be fluent in 6 months, but learn 5 new phrases this week. Each time I reached one, I celebrated. It could be as simple as treating myself to a cup of coffee. These little rewards kept me moving, because success feels bigger when you can actually see it. The second challenge was not having feedback. Without a teacher who would tell me if I was right or wrong, sometimes I repeated a word for months, only to find out I'd been pronouncing it wrong. It was frustrating, but it pushed me to find solutions. I began recording my voice and comparing it to native speakers. At first, it was uncomfortable to hear myself speak, but it became one of my best learning tools. I could spot mistakes, fix them, and track how much better I sounded over time. For writing, I used online forums and language exchange apps. I posted short paragraphs and asked native speakers to correct them. Most people were kind and helpful. They didn't just correct my grammar, they encouraged me. And that connection reminded me I wasn't really learning alone. The internet made the whole world my classroom. The third big challenge was fear, especially the fear of speaking. When I finally met native speakers in real life, I froze. My mind went blank. I worried about every little mistake. What if they don't understand me? What if they laugh? That fear stopped me more than once. But one day, something changed. I realized that making mistakes didn't mean failure. It meant learning. Every time I made a mistake, I was one step closer to fluency. So instead of hiding from conversations, I started embracing them. I began to tell myself, it's okay to sound imperfect, because people don't expect perfect English. They just want to communicate. Once I accepted that, my confidence grew naturally. I laughed at my mistakes instead of fearing them. And when I saw how kind and patient most people were, the fear disappeared. Through these challenges, I learned something deeper about self-learning. It's not just about studying English. It's about learning yourself. You discover how to stay disciplined, how to keep going when no one pushes you. You learn to be patient, to forgive yourself, to try again and again. Each challenge builds strength, not just in your language, but in your mindset. If you're facing similar struggles, remember this: motivation comes and goes, but habits stay. You don't need a teacher to correct you every time. You can correct yourself, and fear will always be there. But courage grows stronger with practice. Learning alone doesn't mean being alone. Your effort connects you to millions of learners doing the same thing around the world. So keep going. When it feels hard, that's when growth is happening. When it feels slow, that's when your foundation is forming. Every mistake, every frustration, every small victory, it all matters. Because in the end, these challenges don't stop you. They shape you into a stronger, more confident version of yourself, both in English and in life. After years of self-study, I had learned a lot. Not just English, but how to learn. And I realized something powerful. Most people don't fail because they're not smart. They fail because they don't have a plan. So I began to organize everything I learned into simple, practical tips, things anyone could follow. The first and most important one is build a daily routine. You don't need to study for hours. Even 20 minutes a day is enough if you do it consistently. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't skip it because it's small. Make English part of your daily rhythm. In the morning, listen to a podcast. During lunch, read an article. Before bed, write a few sentences in your notebook. That's how small actions become big results. The second tip: use free resources. We live in a time when the internet gives us endless tools to learn. You don't need to spend money to study. YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks, online dictionaries, everything is right there. The key is to choose what you enjoy. If you love cooking, watch cooking videos in English. If you like sports, follow English commentators. When you enjoy the content, learning feels effortless. The third tip: speak every day, even if you're alone. Speaking is a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. Don't wait for the perfect partner or the perfect sentence. Talk to yourself, shadow a video, repeat after songs or movies. You might feel silly at first, but it works. The more you speak, the more natural it becomes. One day, you'll realize that words flow without thinking. That's the moment confidence is born. The fourth tip: focus on consistency, not perfection. Many learners wait until they feel ready to speak or write, but that moment never really comes. The truth is, you learn by doing it wrong. Fluency grows from repetition, not perfection. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Be afraid of not trying at all, because every mistake is proof that you're learning something new. The fifth and final tip: use your daily life as your classroom. English is not just in books or lessons, it's everywhere. When you see an object, say its name in English. When you walk outside, describe what you see. The sky is bright. The air feels cool. A car just passed by. It might sound simple, but this habit keeps your brain active. It turns ordinary moments into learning opportunities. Once you apply these 5 tips, something amazing happens. English stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like a skill. You stop saying, "I'm studying English," and start saying, "I live in English." Your favorite songs become lessons. Your hobbies become practice. Your thoughts slowly shift into English. That's when true fluency begins. Not when you know every word, but when you can express yourself freely, even with simple ones. When I look back at my own journey, I see how these small, simple steps changed everything. There was no magic formula, no secret course, no expensive class. Just consistency, curiosity, and courage. And that's what I want every learner to remember. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. So, if you're listening right now wondering where to start with today. Pick one thing. Listen, speak, read or write, and do it for 10 minutes. Then do it again tomorrow and the next day. Each day might feel small, but over time it builds a mountain. And one day, you'll look back and realize you didn't just learn English. You built a new version of yourself, more confident, more patient, and more powerful than before. As we come to the end of this journey, I want you to remember one thing. You don't need the perfect teacher, course, or accent to succeed. All you need is consistency, curiosity, and courage. These three things will take you further than any textbook ever could. If you learn a little every day, your confidence will grow quietly, steadily, naturally. You might not see progress right away, but it's there, building with every effort. So keep going, keep listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Keep believing in your ability to learn. Because if I could do it, you can too. Don't wait for the right time. Start now. Every small step counts, and each one brings you closer to fluency. Thank you for joining me today. Stay curious, stay consistent, and never stop learning. Your best teacher has always been you.